Is there, from a legal, philosophical, moral perspective, is there genocide going on in Gaza today?
Is there a genocide going on in Gaza? Well, in several years, we will have a definitive response
But at the
to
moment,
that question. What has happened thus far is that on the 29th of December, the Republic of South Africa instituted proceedings against Israel pursuant to the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. South Africa basically accused Israel of perpetrating genocide in the Gaza Strip. On the 26th of January, the court issued its initial ruling. The court at this stage is not making a determination on whether Israel has or has not committed genocide. So just as it has not found Israel guilty, it certainly also hasn't found Israel innocent. What the court had to do at this stage was take one of two decisions. Either South Africa's case was the equivalent of a frivolous lawsuit and dismiss it and close the proceedings, or it had to determine that South Africa presented a plausible case that Israel was violating its obligations under the Genocide Convention, and that it would, on that basis, hold a full hearing. Now, a lot of people have looked at the court's ruling of the 26th of January and focused on the fact that the court did not order a ceasefire. I actually wasn't expecting it to order a ceasefire, and I wasn't surprised that it didn't, because in the other cases that the court has considered, most prominently Bosnia and Myanmar, it also didn't order a ceasefire. And South Africa, in requesting a ceasefire, also didn't ask the court to render an opinion on the legitimacy or lack thereof of Israel's military operation. From my perspective, the key issue on the 26th of January was whether the court would simply dismiss the case or decide to proceed with it.
And it decided to proceed.
And it decided to proceed. And I think that's enormously.
I thought that was
I think that's
beautifully
enormously
But you said they committed
significant.
genocide. You already said they committed genocide.
I also
Israel
like-
is committing genocide.
But if
You
I
used
could
that
just-
word.
allow me.
Use that word.
That's correct.
Now,
I don't run away.
So
from
Norman,
my
you
word.
did say Israel
Norm,
committing
I would
genocide.
Can you let Mouin
Yeah.
finish?
well, the end of the story is you specifically asked whether I think Israel is committing genocide. I explained formally there is no finding, and as you said, we won't know for a number of years. And I think there's legitimate questions to be raised. I mean, in the Bosnia case, which I think all four of us would agree was clearly a case of genocide, the court
You
determined.
mean by the Serbs?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the Bosnia case, the court determined that of all the evidence placed before them, only Srebrenica qualified as genocide, and all the other atrocities committed did not qualify as genocide. You know, international law is a developing organism. I don't know how the court is going to respond in this case, so I wouldn't take it as a foregone conclusion how the court is going to respond.
But Norman has determined already.
I have too, because you're asking my personal
opinion is also.
So as a matter of law, I want to state very clearly, it has not been determined and won't be determined for several years. Based on my observations and the evidence before me, I would say it's indisputable that Israel is engaged in a genocidal assault against the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip.
Which is the PLO line.
Yeah, with the
Genocidal.
program, the PLO is long past.
Okay, the
what
Palestinian
defines
Authority.
as you were saying, genocide is not a body count. Genocide consists of two elements: the destruction of a people in whole or in part. So in other words, you can commit genocide by killing 30,000 people. It doesn't have, well, 5 probably is below
There
the
is a problem
threshold.
of numbers.
Yes, but I think 30,000 crosses the threshold, and not reaching 500,000 is probably irrelevant. And the second element is there has to be an intent. In other words,
And you believe there's an intent?
yes, I think if there is any other plausible reason for why all these people are being murdered, it's not genocide. And as far as intent is
What about
concerned,
hiding behind a human shield? You don't think that's a reason for them being killed?
well, let's get the intent part out of the way first. South Africa's
Forget South Africa. They're not the party.
well, I'd
They
like to
made-
finish.
they
They're
made
I'd
just
like,
the
pro-Hamas
application.
government. That's got nothing to do with
I
anything.
think they're
Hamas.
pro-Satan as well last time.
No,
I
they're
checked.
pro-Hamas.
For some reason, you don't have a problem with people being pro-Israeli at the time of this, but if they support Palestinians' right to life or self-determination, they get demonized and
Not because of
delegitimized
that,
as
because they
pro-Hamas.
supported an organization which murdered 1,200 people deliberately. That's my problem.
But supporting a state that has murdered 30,000.
But they
is okay
haven't,
for
because
you.
these are 30,000
Okay.
are basically human
Well, just to
shields
get back-
used by the Hamas,
Okay.
And
in
you
which the
just-
Hamas
and
please, Norm.
wanted killed.
Okay, if
They
I
wanted
could-
them killed.
All right, if I
The
could,
Hamas wanted these people
sure.
killed.
If I could just get
You don't think they wanted them killed? They
No,
didn't
I don't.
provide them with shelters. They build tunnels for their fighters,
Okay,
but
if I
not
could get
one
back to my
shelter
point.
for their own civilians.
You asked me about
Of
intent.
course they want them killed.
Okay, you asked me about intent, and the reason that I bought in the South African application is because it is actually exceptionally detailed on intent by quoting
All
numerous.
sorts of idiotic ministers in Israel.
Well, yeah, including the prime minister, the defense
the Prime
minister,
didn't say
the
kill,
chief of
didn't
staff.
say genocide. the chief
No, he
of
said
staff-
Amalek.
According to
He
Asa
said
Kasher,
Amalek.
Use the word
According
Amalek
to Asa
because the
Kasher-
Hamas are a really
According
evil
to Asa
organization.
Kasher,
if I may.
according to Asa Kasher, the philosopher of the
Asa Kasher,
IDF,
yeah.
he said that Netanyahu
He's
was
just an old
was
Iranian.
avowing genocide.
So-
Now he's an idiot.
So
I
the
didn't say
point.
he's an idiot, but he is
Yeah.
past it.
So the
Well,
reason
that
I
makes
raised the South African application is twofold:
Yeah.
Hamas or no Hamas. It's exceptionally detailed
Okay.
on the question of intent, and secondly, when the International Court of Justice issues a ruling, individual justices have
Can
the
give
right
their
can
own-
give their own opinion.
Yeah.
And I found the German one to be the most interesting on this specific question, because he was basically saying that he didn't think South Africa presented a persuasive case. But he said their section on intent was so overpowering that he felt he was left with no choice but to vote with the majority. So I think that answers the intent part of your question.
So for the ICJ case that South Africa's brought, I think there's a couple things that need to be mentioned. One is, and I saw you two talk at length about this, the plausibility standard is incredibly low. The only thing we're looking for is a basic presentation of facts that make it conceivable, possible, that
Plausible.
plausible, which legally this is obviously below criminal conviction, below,
Yes, of course.
below.
Think of it as an
it's-
indictment.
Sure, possibly. Maybe even a lower level than even an indictment. So plausibility is an incredibly low standard, number one. Number two, if you actually go through and you read the complaint that South Africa filed, I would say that if you go through the quotes and you even follow through to the source of the quotes, the misrepresentation that South Africa does in their case about all of these horrendous quotes, in my opinion, borders on criminal.
Well, 16 ICJ judges disagree.
That's fine if 16 ICJ judges disagree,
They must
but
be
I'm going to
awful
give,
incompetent.
they could be,
They
but
must be. Even the American judge, she must have been awful incompetent if she was unable to see the misrepresentations that Mr. Bonnell, based on his Wikipedia entry, was able to find.
so this is based on the official ICJ report that was
Yeah,
released. I'm not sure if you read the entire thing or not.
read every
Okay, that's great.
aspect.
Did you go through and actually identify any of the sources for the underlying quotes?
Actually, brace yourself for this, and Mouin could confirm it.
Mhm.
Yaniv Kogan, an Israeli, and Jamie Stern Weiner, half Israeli, they checked every single quote in the Hebrew original. And Yaniv Kogan, loved the guy. He has terrifying powers of concentration. He checked every single quote. Is that correct, Mouin? And Jamie checked every single quote in the English, in the context. And where there were any contextual questions, they told us.
I think they found one.
Yeah, I think I found one. So I do not believe that those 15 judges, it was 15-2.
16-2, I think.
They're 15 on the court plus 2, so it's 17. So it's 15 to 2. I don't think those 15 judges were incompetent, and I certainly don't believe the president of the court, an American, would allow herself to be duped.
Okay.
Because
let me read.
You might recall, Mr. Burrell.
Let me read
Mr.
the quote.
Burrell.
I think you want to read one.
Let him read.
Sure. So this was taken from the South African complaint. There's tons of these, but so here's one. In the complaint for the ICJ, they said that on the 12th of October, 2023, President Isaac Herzog made clear that Israel was not distinguishing between militants and civilians in Gaza, stating in a press conference to foreign media in relation to Palestinians in Gaza, over 1 million of whom are children, quote, "It's an entire nation out there that is responsible. Yeah. It is not true, this rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved.
I saw that.
It's absolutely not true, and we will fight until we break their backbone," end quote. If you actually go to the news article that they even link it in their complaint, the full context for the quote was, quote, "It is an entire nation out there that is responsible. It's not true, this rhetoric about civilians not being aware, not involved. It's absolutely not true. They could have risen up. They could have fought against that evil regime, which took over Gaza in a coup d'etat. But we are at war. We are defending our homes. We are protecting our homes. That's the truth. And when a nation protects its home, it fights, and we will fight until we break their backbone." He acknowledged that many Gazans had nothing to do with Hamas, but was adamant that others did. Quote, "I agree. There are many innocent Palestinians who don't agree with this, but you have a missile in your goddamn kitchen and you want to shoot it at me. Am I allowed to defend myself? We have to defend ourselves. We have the right to do so." This is not the same as saying there's no distinction between militants and civilians in Gaza. His statement here is actually fully compliant with international law to the letter, because if you are storing military supplies in civilian areas, these things become military targets and you're allowed to do proportionality assessments afterwards. So if this is supposed to be one of many quotes that they've shown that is supposed to demonstrate genocidal intent, but it is very easily explained by military intent or by a conflict between two parties.
I saw that press conference.
Wait, let me just say something. All of this talk is a bit irrelevant because it may sound to the listeners that the court in The Hague has ruled that Israel is committing genocide.
No, I think
but it hasn't.
No.
It just is going in the next few years to look at the whole subject.
Okay.
There has been no determination at all.
Fine.
And as Stephen says, some of the quotes are not exactly accurate quotes or taken out of context.
Total mischaracterization.
Yes.
Okay. It is correct, as Mouin put it, that it'll be several years before the court makes a determination.
And my guess is that it will determine there was no genocide.
We can only
That's my guess. I'm just giving you my guess.
I can't predict. I got it all wrong, actually, as Mouin will attest. I got it all wrong the first time. I never thought the American judge would vote in favor of plausibility.
So you admit that you were wrong?
Yeah, of course. I think I tell Mouin twice a day, I was wrong about this and I was wrong about that. I'm not wrong about the facts. I try not to be, but my speculations, they can be wrong. Okay, leaving that aside. First of all, as Mouin pointed out, there's a difference between the legal decision by the ruling and an independent judgment. Now, South Africa was not filing a frivolous case. That was 84 pages. It was single.
Even 84 pages can be frivolous.
It takes an hour and a half to read. It was not a massive case.
It was single-spaced, and it had literally hundreds of footnotes.
It can still be frivolous.
It's possible.
Of course,
it
but
could
this
be.
one wasn't.
Yeah, I read the report. To tell you the truth, I followed very closely everything that's been happening to October 7th. I was mesmerized. I couldn't believe the comprehensiveness of that particular report. Number two, there are two quite respected judges, there were two quite respected experts of international law sitting on the South African panel, John Dugard and Vaughan Lowe. Vaughan Lowe, as you might know, he argued the Wall case in 2004 before the International Court of Justice. Now, they were alleging genocide, which in their view means the evidence in their minds, we're not yet at the court, the evidence in their minds compels the conclusion that genocide is being committed. I am willing, because I happen to know Mr. Dugard personally and have corresponded with Von Lowe. I've heard their claim. I've read the report. I would say they make a very strong case. But let's agree plausible. Now, here's a question. If somebody qualifies for an Olympic team, let's say a regional person qualifies for an Olympic team, it doesn't mean they're going to be on the Olympic team. It doesn't mean they're going to win a gold medal, a silver medal, or a bronze
But
medal.
they can swim. That's what you're saying.
No, I would say that's a very high bar.
You're saying they can swim.
To even qualify.
Swim well enough to have a realistic prospect
yeah,
of
got
winning
that.
a medal.
So, to even make it to plausible.
That is
a high
not true.
bar.
to even-
That is not
it's
what
a
plausible
very
means.
high-
It is absolutely not. You're dead wrong.
Mr. Borelli, please don't teach me about the English language.
So the
I
declaration of
said,
Judge
I
Boyd
said
says that the court
plausibility
is not
is the
asked
same
in the present
concept as
phase.
qualifying.
The court is not asked at this present phase of the proceedings to determine whether South Africa's allegations of genocide
Didn't I
are
just
well-founded. They're not
Didn't I just
well-founded.
say
They're not
that?
even well-founded.
Did
The court isn't. You said that plausible was a high standard. It is absolutely not. It is a misrepresentation of the strength of the case against Israel, just like the majority
Not-
of the quotes
not
they have in this
every-
case are. And also, you said it was an extremely well-founded case. They spend like 1/4 of all of the quotations, some even pulled from the Goldstone report, that try to that actually deal with the intent part. Which is, by the way, I think you guys, I don't know if you use the phrase the dolo specialis, that the intentional part of genocide.
I don't know that term.
I think it's called dolo specialis. It is the most important part of genocide, which is proving it is a highly special intent to commit genocide. It's possible that Israel could.
That's mens rea.
No.
It should prove
The
the
mens
mental
rea.
state.
Yes, I understand the state of mind, but and for genocide, it's called dolo specialis. It's a highly special intent. Did you read the case?
Yeah.
It is
Mr.
a highly
Borelli,
special intent
I'm
to be
gonna
convicted
ask you
of
again.
genocide. Yes.
Please stop displaying your imbecility.
Okay, I'm sorry if you think the declaration of the judge is imbecile.
Don't put on public display that you're a moron. At least have the self-possession to shut up. Did I
I'm
read the
comfortable putting
case?
my display on camera if you're comfortable
Borelli,
putting yours in
Mr.
books.
Borelli,
Okay.
His name
I
is
read the case around 4 times. I read all of the majority opinion, the declarations. I read Aaron Barak's declaration.
Then why are you lying and saying plausible is a high standard?
Because I said, even reaching the benchmark of plausibility is a very high standard in the world. It's the equivalent of a regional player qualifying for an Olympics. It's still 2 steps removed. You may not be on the team and you may not get a medal, but to get qualified, which in this context is the equivalent of plausible, you must be doing something pretty horrible.
But
And as it happens, Professor Morris,
there was no
as-
genocide.
as-
That's
as-
what the court will rule. Remember what I just told you. The court will
I don't
rule
expect
there
to
was
be
no
even
genocide.
around when the court reaches its final decision.
Why?
Why? It'll take a long, long time.
2 years, 3
No,
years.
I don't think it'll take 2 or 3 years.
I mean,
but-
Bosnia, which was admittedly a special type of case because they were accusing Serbia of sponsoring the Bosnian Serbs, that took, I think, 17 years from 90.
I assume they'll take 2 or 3 years.
But the point you're making, so this
I'm
is
saying
illegal.
that something horrible must be happening to even achieve.
It is horrible. It's a war.
Yeah,
It's true,
It's
yes.
horrible.
But I
Except
think-
they weren't rendering a ruling on a war. They were rendering a ruling on a genocide.
And I think
They
the
didn't render it.
suggestion.
And they said it was
They just said,
plausible.
well,
They also
we'll
said it was
talk about it.
plausible that Israel is committing a
But I thi-
military
I thi-
operation as well.
Yeah, but I think the problem with your characterization is you're saying in so many words the South Africans basically only had to show up in court with a coherent
Right.
Basically,
statement.
yes, that is correct.
In today's
needed-
atmosphere, that's probably correct.
They needed to do a lot more.
Not
they
much more.
they needed
Not
to
much more.
they needed
The
to
American
persuade.
judge?
Today's atmosphere.
The
forget
American
American.
judge?
They needed
Today's
to
atmosphere,
persuade.
Judges go according to what the majority want to hear.
Yeah, but
That's
they
He was
needed-
the president.
They needed to persuade the court that it was worth investing several years of their time in
They're probably
hearing
well
this
paid
case.
for it, so they-
They're well paid whether
they
they
have
take
time
this
for it.
case or not. I mean, you know, they have a full docket whether they accept or reject this case. And I don't think we should
Remember what I just said. They won't rule there was genocide. Remember what I said.
Also, I recommend people actually read the case and follow through a lot of the quotes. That they just don't show genocidal
Mr. Borelli,
intent.
I don't
brace
think so
yourself.
either.
The Israeli Minister of
Mr.
Finance on the
Borelli.
8th of October, 2023. This is taken from the ICJ. This is from South Africa's submission. Bezalel Smotrich, I can't read this, stated,
Bezalel Smotrich.
there you go. Okay, at a meeting of the Israeli cabinet that, quote, we need to deal a blow that hasn't been seen in 50 years and take down Gaza, end quote. But again, if you click through and you read the source, their own linked source, it says, as per this own source, quote, the powerful finance minister, settler leader Bezalel Smotrich, I can't pronounce this, demanded at the cabinet meeting late Saturday that the army, quote, hit Hamas brutally and not take the matter of the captives into significant consideration, end quote. Quote, in war, as in war, you have to be brutal, end quote. He was quoted as saying, quote, we need to deal a blow that hasn't been seen in 50 years and take down Gaza, end quote. You can't strip the quotation of Hamas, a entity that you're at war with, and then pretend that there's genocidal intent. That's not how it's...
That's not genocide.
So when the Ukrainians say we need to defeat Russia,
that's not genocide.
no. When Ukraine says we need to defeat Russia, is that genocidal? Do they mean killing all Russian citizens?
Professor Morris, here's another one. When the defense, ridiculous.
Yes, ridiculous.
The American judge.
He also doesn't determine policy.
The American judge read.
You are holding the American judge to
Well, he was the president.
Because he'll appeal to authority when it agrees with him, and we won't deal with the actual facts of the matter, ever.
Okay. The American judge read several of the quotes.
Look at the American Supreme Court today. They may support Trump. It shows you how worthy American judges are.
Professor Morris, without going too far afield, if you heard a statement by the defense minister said, we are going to prevent any food, water, fuel, or electricity from entering Gaza.
Do that?
He wanted to make
Did Israel do that?
Okay, no, I'm wondering.
What he said.
I'm asking you.
Isn't Israeli government policy?
But we're talking about statements now, intent. How would you interpret that?
After 1,200 of your citizens are murdered the way they were, I would expect extreme statements by lots of politicians.
But you're
by lots of politicians.
But you don't accept extreme
But that's not
Palestinian
Israeli policy.
Wait, but you don't accept
What he said isn't Israeli policy.
But you don't.
They let in water. They let in gas.
Untrue.
They let
you don't
in
accept.
electricity.
But you don't accept extreme
Untrue.
Palestinian statements after they lost their entire country, not just 1,200 people.
That's a good point. No, it's a good point.
And on that, on that brief moment of agreement, let's just take a quick pause. We need a smoke break. We need a water break. We need a bathroom break.
Take down Gaza is not a genocide.
I don't know
Defeat
what it
Russia
means.
is a genocidal
What does
statement.
take down
When
Gaza
we went to
mean?
war with Iraq and we wanted to destroy Iraq, that was a
Take down
genocidal
Gaza.
statement. There's a reason why genocide is such an importantly guarded concept, and it's not to condemn every nation that goes to war.
Mr. Bonnell,
Wait, you do know how to pronounce my name. Are you mispronouncing it intentionally?
He made you into an Italian all the time.
touched by your solicitude for international law.
You should try learning it sometime. It would help you sort out a lot of the civilian deaths.
Unfortunately, 15 judges disagree.
You could keep citing the judges. You should actually try reading the actual statements.